Hi, I'm Jeff. This is Tropical Plants at 53 degrees north. So today we're going to take a look at a couple of orchids that have caused a little bit of confusion for me, so I'm guessing they're going to cause some confusion for other people too. I'm talking of course about Miltonia versus Miltoniopsis. They sound very similar, so what's going on with those names, and are these indeed similar orchids requiring similar care conditions? So let's dive in. And we're in. So over here I have two plants of each. I've got Miltoniopsis looking really healthy. I've got Miltoniopsis, which is kind of an embarrassment to show on the worldwide internet. However, I'm going to show it anyway because that's the kind of person I am. There are some nice growths on it though, so don't be too harsh on me. And over here we also have some Miltonia spectabilis, which I did do a video about a number of months ago. So we're going to get all these plants on the benches and we're going to talk about why they sound the same and what are the differences and the similarities. Okay, so we've got four plants over here on the benches, so we can take a close look at them and try and figure out what the differences are and where this confusion kind of cropped up. So we've got our Miltoniopsis over here and we've got our Miltonias here. Now the Miltonias, this is the same plant. This was just divided, I can't remember when it was, it seems like forever ago now, but it was probably this year at some point. So this is Miltonia spectabilis, and it's actually a native species of Brazil. This one is Miltoniopsis Newton Falls, and I've had that one since early April, and this was my first ever Miltoniopsis and I nearly killed it, and it's not looking that great now. Let me see, so that would have been September 2019 when I first purchased that. Well, actually that was my first repot. I think I purchased it probably about springtime 2019. It does have some new growths on it, and I probably would have chucked it away by now, to be honest, and I'm sure other people would give up on it by now, but I'm just curious to see whether I can coax it back to the stately plant that it was when I first purchased it. It did have some beautiful blooms on it, and what happened was we'll get into the temperatures and so on, but the roots rotted, in short, and I had to repot it and try and rescue it. So it's not showing a great response to that, but it does keep throwing up flower spikes. I think it's like in its last death throes. It's seeing if it can throw a few blooms up before it dies. So anyway, what we can do is we can look at these plants and see what the differences are. It's quite obvious when you get them together like this. This really is the one that I need to concentrate on, and that's probably the better of the two of the Miltonias. So why do they sound very similar? So first of all, a Miltoniopsis, also known as the pansy orchid, which is this one over here. This one was actually discovered later than the Miltonia. So the Miltonia is a species, it only grows in Brazil, doesn't grow anywhere else natively. This one was discovered first. This one was discovered in 1889. This one doesn't grow in Brazil, but it grows in the surrounding highlands, the countries surrounding Brazil, in the highlands, in the cloud forests. So straight away that should tell you a little bit about the differences in them. This one is a warm grower. This one is supposedly a cool grower, which again I'll come to in a little while. So when the Miltoniopsis was discovered, it was actually registered in 1889 as its own genus. So Miltoniopsis was a genus in 1889. You'd have thought from then on everything would be absolutely fine. It's got its own genus, it will not then be confused with these. However, maybe because they give them a similar name, I don't know. Maybe because prior to that they thought they were similar, I don't know. But despite it being given its own genus in 1889, people carried on to lump them together. So Miltoniopsis was still lumped under the Miltonia genus, and in actual fact even up to, and all I've been able to find out is even up to 2018, there are new Miltoniopsis hybrids coming on the market which still have the name of Miltonia on them, even though the Miltoniopsis. Now, whether that's changed from 2018, I don't know. Maybe somebody can chip in the comments if they know the answer to that. But obviously that's not going to do anything in terms of sorting out this confusion, because people are then going to treat them as if they are one or the other, and of course that is a recipe for disaster, because this one is a cool grower and this one is a warm grower. But again, I've got something to mention about that, and just to show you my kind of experiences with them. So what differences have we got here? So Miltoniopsis supposedly has one leaf at the apex of each pseudobulb. So I'm taking that to be this here, apex, top of the pseudobulb, and there's the one leaf coming out at a time, one leaf at a time. Whereas on our Miltonia we have two leaves coming out at the same time at the top of the pseudobulb. So that's one difference. You can see in terms of the spread of the rhizome. So here you've got the pseudobulbs are very far apart, or certainly a lot further apart than on the Miltoniopsis. The pseudobulbs can be longer, but they're also more rounded. You can see from this one here, that one is quite a rounded pseudobulb. Whereas over on the Miltoniopsis, everything's a little bit more squished together. They're quite flat. I think the information said they are laterally squashed, the pseudobulbs, which is another difference. And of course, as I say, they're all in a bunch there. They have not got a rhizome that creeps quite as extensively as on Miltonia. When it comes to comparing blooms, well, the Miltoniopsis tends to be a larger bloom, very showy, very attractive, real big splashes of colour, and the lip or the labellum tends to be a lot more attractive. I suppose that's subjective, but in my opinion it's more attractive. And on the Miltonia it seems to be a lot simpler, not quite as much dotting or spotting going on, and more of a simple kind of traditional flower. The foliage colour is also different. So we've got the Miltonia, actually, when I look back at the video that I first did of this one, the leaves were very, very yellow, and apparently that can come from too much sun. Now I've got it in a more shady spot now, and you can see these new leaves are a lot greener. Now whether the spot that I've got them in at the moment is too shady, because they do like quite bright light, just not direct sunlight. This is similar in that sense, the Miltoniopsis. They don't like to be absolutely in direct sun, but they don't like to be in deep shade either. But you can see the differences in the colour. I'm not the world's best at describing colour, but this is supposed to be like a grey-green colour, whereas this is more of a traditional kind of yellowy green colour that you get with orchid leaves. But you can make your own comparisons there. So you can see that they look quite different, but in terms of care and culture needs, well, that's where the differences are quite stark. So first of all, let's start with the Miltonia. This is probably the one that is the easiest to grow, and there doesn't appear to be much debate in terms of what these actually need. So because they're warm growing, the Miltonias can obviously tolerate much warmer temperatures. They're not as fussy in terms of the moisture. I mean, I water these probably about once a week at the moment in summer. I do let them dry out first, and the media that they're in is a little bit more moisture retentive. Again, they're not really as fussy. The Miltoniopsis, on the other hand, can really cause problems depending on what your own microclimate is. So Miltonia's temperatures, we're talking somewhere between 13 and 25 degrees Celsius, although where mine is, it's been getting up to 30. It's not really suffering too much, little bit of yellowing on the leaves. These have bloomed last year. They bloomed a couple of times last year. They can bloom both spring and in autumn. We'll take a look at the flowers in a minute. I'll put something on screen so you can see the difference in the flowers, because there is quite a difference in the flowers. The Miltoniopsis are supposedly more fragrant. However, this Miltonia spectabilis is actually a very fragrant one, and there are about 10 species of Miltonia that have been found so far. The blooms last for a couple of months, which is always a good sign with a flower. These are supposedly very sensitive to salt build-up, so they do need a flush regularly. Humidity, they like a lot of humidity, above 80%. I keep mine at about 70, but that's about as good as I can do. If I do it any more than that, then the fogger is on permanently. And of course, some of my other plants wouldn't really like that, so I'm walking a bit of a line with it. But they don't seem to mind. I'm quite sure the next step now for these is to produce some new bloom sheaths, which I'm sure they will towards the end of the year, ready for a spring blooming again next year. They've certainly put quite a lot of growth on since I chopped and hacked them away. They would really do better either in some shallower pots than these, but I didn't have anything at the time. And you can mount them, they don't mind that. They, as I say, they're a bit like bulbophyllums in that sense. They kind of creep along at quite a rapid, well, rapid for orchids. And you can see this one here, quite a rapid rate. This one is beginning to make a break for it, where it's already moved along, produced a new pseudobulb, and it's looking for somewhere to put those roots down. Completely different growth habit from Miltoniopsis. So that's the Miltonias. So let's have a look at the Miltoniopsis a little bit more closely. So we've said the Miltoniopsis has one leaf coming out at the apex of the pseudobulbs, which are a lot more tightly spaced at the bottom there. So these like cooler temperatures, so they come from the highlands of the surrounding countries around Brazil. So we're talking about the cloud forests where the temperature really gets above about 18, 19, 20 degrees Celsius. And they're also going to be quite shaded as well. However, accepted wisdom is that they do like quite bright light, not bright sunlight, otherwise the leaves will either easily burn or turn yellow like they do on the Miltonia. Quite high humidity, between 50-70%. Now the thing with these, the main area of debate is the temperatures and the moisture. And it's a very fine line to get the moisture just right, because if these roots do not get to a point where they are sufficiently dry, they will easily rot. Now, by sufficiently dry, I'm talking about a very, very fine line where they are just about to dry out. We don't want them to be kept absolutely sopping wet constantly, and I leave mine a long time actually. Again, it's very, very dependent on your own microclimate. Because I've had this since early April, and it's, as far as I'm concerned anyway, it's thriving. It's got new pseudobulbs, it's got new growth. I've repotted it and all the roots are still looking good. I can see them in the pot. Let's see if I can find any. I can just about see them down there, see, and they're all looking fine. I've left some room for some new growth there. There are a lot of roots in there. This is why it's such a big pot, and I'm expecting a bloom spike to come pretty soon. But this one hasn't concertinaed much, little bit there, not so much, and I really trying to avoid watering it so that this is constantly wet, even though the temperatures in here at the moment are quite high. Now you would say, and this is where the controversy comes along, you would expect that because they live in a cloud forest, you would expect them to really hate the temperatures going up to 30 degrees. So what I've tried to do to mitigate that, I've got a fan that isn't too far from it, and I've got them in perhaps the shadiest corner of my greenhouse that doesn't get direct sunlight, but it's not absolutely pitch black under the bench kind of shade either. Like I've said, in terms of the watering, I will let all that water come through. I've done my absolute best to make sure that it drains well, but I've also got a little bit of moss in there as well to keep that little bit of moisture. I don't know, it's almost like an impossible task. How can you keep it damp but let it dry out? How can you stop those roots from rotting at the lower temperatures, but yeah, at the higher temperatures you don't want it to completely topple over and wilt because it hates to be above 20 degrees Celsius. I think it may just be in my case that I just don't have the conditions. I can't keep a Miltoniopsis between 12 degrees to 20 degrees Celsius all year round. The conditions that I've got, even though I've got various systems in place to try and mitigate that, there's absolutely no way I can keep the temperatures below 30 degrees. It's that higher end really that I struggle with. I can keep them above a certain temperature, but I can't cool it down. The only way to do that would be to put some kind of air conditioning in here. Cost would be just totally prohibitive to that. So I'm doing the best I can with it, and to be honest, if this one really can't tolerate these higher temperatures in summer, then it's going to have to keel over and die like the other one nearly did. So it's a shame because there's such lovely flowers. I mean, the Miltoniopsis flowers are one of the, well, in my opinion anyway, they're one of the nicest flowers that you can get in the orchid world. They're really big. I mean, I know they supposedly look like a pansy. I can see the similarity, but they're not absolutely identical to pansies. They're certainly head turners. You notice them straight away. So the little bit of controversy I was talking about earlier in terms of Miltoniopsis is that I've read loads of, well, not loads of information, but I've read information from some quite credible sources which is completely opposite. So the first one is the one that I've just been telling you about, in terms of it being best to keep them between 12 degrees Celsius to 20, or 18 to 20 degrees Celsius, no higher than that. So you want the drop at night, but during the day you want to get them up to about 18 to 20. Now that's something that I can't do in the middle of summer. It's just too expensive. So what I tend to do is, in this warmer side of the greenhouse, I keep them at about 16 degrees Celsius. I was trying to get them above that, but it was just costing me a fortune. So the way I look at it now is I just try to keep a minimum, and if the sun comes out that day, great. If you go any warmer, fantastic, but it's unlikely to happen, certainly in like December, January, February time. So yeah, I was saying I read some information from a commercial grower. Now surely we can trust a commercial grower. I understand science changes, book information changes, but surely we can trust a commercial grower to give us the lowdown on what actually works. If they're doing it for a living, they must have been able to make a profit from it. So anyway, this commercial grower was telling me that the temperatures for his Miltoniopsis were between, I think he said 24 to 29 degrees Celsius. That was what he was growing them in, and that was what he was recommending. And he actually made a point of saying that many people try to grow them cool. However, he says they grow better when they are warmer. So, and here's the point that I was trying to make. This one, at the moment, is actually, I would say, being grown as a warm plant, even though that wasn't my intention, just to keep it out of the cool side, which it was getting too cool. It was dropping to 12 degrees in there. Well, I actually had it to 7 at one point, just to keep them out of that and to try and avoid rotting those roots in those cold temperatures, and to make sure that these pots were drying out. I put it into the warm side. Look at that one and look at that one. This one stopped dying, even though it's certainly not thriving, and this one bloomed for me and is still putting on growth and seems to be doing okay, despite the fact that it's going up to 32 degrees the other day. It was 32 degrees Celsius. Now the problem with coming to a conclusion like that is that we're talking short term here, and very often you don't see the damage until quite a way down the line. So if these roots are rotting or they're dying because the temperature's too hot, I probably won't know about it until it's too late. So that's the dilemma that all us growers have. I've not chosen to put them into those kind of conditions. That's just the best I can do with what I've got. So that's the little bit of controversy out the way. So I honestly don't know. I would still, my instinct says, if they grow in a place where the temperatures don't go above 20, then that will be the best place for it to grow. But who knows? It's a cultivar So these things can change, can't they? You've just got to keep trying your best to react to what happens with the plant. So at the moment it's doing okay. We'll see how it goes towards autumn and winter time, and if I feel like it could cope with going down to 12, then I will put it into the cooler side. But of course my problem then is that it won't go much above 12 in the depths of winter. It may be that I can put it in the cooler side through autumn, and then I bring it into the warmer side through the really cold months of the year. Who knows? Maybe I keep it in the cooler side overnight and move it into the warmer side during the day. Whether I can be bothered doing that and whether I remember doing that, I don't know. So anyway, those are the differences between Miltoniopsis and Miltonia. And I hope if you've got a couple of these plants that you manage to see the differences and make sure that your culture and care is appropriately different depending on which it is. And if you've got a Miltoniopsis that's labelled as a Miltonia or vice versa, then I wish you the very best of luck. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.